Hello, I'm Ramirez with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts, and today we're going to talk about the differences, illusions, possibly delusions about working with Pollaxe trainers versus an actual Pollaxe. So I'm going to put one of these down for a moment and talk a little bit about Pollaxe. Now, this Pollaxe weighs roughly 7-ish pounds, might even go into the 8 mark. When I weighed it, my scale isn't one of those really fancy ones, it just has the springs, and it was going around 7-ish, 8-ish pounds. This is very heavy, and where it's heavy is important. The balance point on this type of Pollaxe, and I do want to remind people there are other styles. This is probably one of the more famous ones, but there are other styles. But you have to remember the balance point is really very much towards the head. So about there, and even then I think this is well past the rondel point where it balances. And this plays an awful lot to how you want to use it. If I'm holding it here, the head is really where all that weight is. And even just keeping this out in the guard of a dag is going to put a lot more stress on you, especially if you're wearing armor, with your arm with that extra weight extended out. That's why a lot of people will see the guard of the Q, which has the Q forward. If I flip this behind my rondel, now this is giving me amazing movement of that butt spike because this is back weighted. So coming into techniques where I'm using the Q is very effective. Can I, and according to Le Jeu de la Hache, I can throw that forward as long as I don't bring my hands too close together where I would lose control of the weapon. But one of the things I probably wouldn't want to do is really try to reach out here. And the reason for that is I have this heavy weight, and the real weakness in a Pollaxe is the pole, is the shaft. If I use the demi-hache, the middle, this makes sense. Especially if I grab it just before the rondel, I get good movement. I have a little more weight up here, but I can effectively use this. But if I really swung, and even if this stops, the likelihood of where it's going to break is right here. You'll notice that these langets run really long in this example, but that's the most likely thing to break. So some of the things when we're using trainers is A, we don't get that weight up front. If I, once again, since all the weight is up here, if I have to grab someone else, grab their weapon or something like that, I can still, with the weight of this, I can hit someone and still do damage. Or I can use this like a short spear and get people in places. That makes sense. There's enough weight in the head to carry this through. Conversely, once again, if I'm back here, that kind of action can make sense. The weight, I would always tell you flip that, so you're using the hammer end when going into stabs like that with very little trouble. But with this guiding, that front hand, very easy to use. But as I said, a lot of times I've seen people, and I'm guilty of this myself in sparring, where we'll take it way back here to try to do these big swings. And that's where I said there's a lot of potential for breakage on an actual Pollaxe, and we don't really see that as much in the manuals. Conversely, I'm just going to find a safe place to put this down. Here is the descendant leather Pollaxe, and here, let's take a look at where the point of balance is. Point of balance is way further away from the head. This head has negligible mass. It's very easy for me to extend all the way out and not really worry about having to recover. I can flip for the other side. I'm not getting quite the same distribution of weight, but that idea that I'm going to swing way out here or way out there, I can get away with it. I can even come in, raise my arms to make sure that axe gets low. If I did that with my reproduction poleaxe, that's not going to really happen. It's not to say this is useless. If you're doing Blossfectin and you're using these, which is what we use, where we use these, you can still learn important things about using the cross. Using the crochet underneath for hooking. I think these are valuable things we get out of it. Obviously also, learning how to use the queue or the tail of the spear to do our point work. I think the catch is sometimes we unrealistically make movements that we couldn't do or it would be very unwise to do with an actual poleaxe. Same thing is true, and I want to point out, this weighs roughly a third of what my reproduction weighs. Probably even less, it might even be a quarter. This weighs less than half what the reproduction is. And once again, we will see people try to really extend that out where that might not be possible with the poleaxe reproduction shown. Now, there are other types of poleaxe with smaller heads. I think one of the things people miss is like, why don't you have these ginormous, like Conan the Barbarian style heads? And it's like, because it's not practical. Practical in a movie, but if I have a Burgundian poleaxe style with a little head, and you look, they'll probably be about to here, and the beck might be to there. They're not this big because the weight wouldn't allow you to use it effectively. Now, some of those can be a little bit larger, but it's a smaller head, and you have to really be careful about distancing and target. If two people approach each other, and I know right here I can hit that, but he's moving forward, or my opponent's moving forward, and we both go, that metal head might very well miss my target. So we actually want to fight with things fairly close, where if we are this close, I can still hit someone. We'll oftentimes look for that initial shot, but in harness fectin especially, and there's several times I've done this in deed of arms, I've gone to hit someone, and I end up hitting them here, which doesn't count, where I really want to hit on the head. With Blossfectin, doesn't happen as much, but I do notice that, and I think it's something we need to consider. Just how effective we are with these types of simulators would not necessarily be as effective as with an actual historical poleaxe because of the weight difference. When you have that extra weight, you can drop back, you have that nimbleness, but you also can't possibly do this and not expect your poleaxe to break, which is why we don't see tons of that in the manuals. We might see a little extension, but even there, we're not going like full force heavy and throwing down. We want to make sure that anytime we're doing what in Le Jeu they call the tour de bras, that we're using the arms and we're moving the body across, and we're really going forward into that direction. We are not overhand swinging through. We can hit a tour de bras, we can hook, we can still thrust, but we want to be careful about really overextending. I think that that's something that, once again, we can kind of get away with the trainers, but we're not doing service to ourselves if historically we want to see how these things were used. So those are some thoughts and observations. If you'd like to, please leave a comment below if you have questions, comments, etc. Once again, my name is Ramirez. I'm with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts. We're based out of Norfolk, Virginia, and I will leave a link below for information about our club, and I will see you in the next video.